Hello, and welcome to this meeting of the Planning and Development Council of the Council of the Town of Oakville. Madam Clerk, do we have any regrets this evening?
We have no regrets.
Thank you. Council, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Madam Clerk, I see none. Would two of you like to move us into Committee of the Whole, as is our custom for a planning meeting? Councilor O'Meara and Councilor Knoll, thank you. Any objection? Madam Clerk, there being none, that carries, and we are resolved into Committee of the Whole. Council, you have three consent items that begin this agenda. The assumption of Trinity United Church 3 lot subdivision and the partial assumption of Monarch 5B subdivision and the recommendation report on the draft plan of condominium for BC Trafalgar Inc. at 3200 William Colson Avenue. Is there a motion for the consent items? Councillor Duddock, thank you. Is there an objection? There being none, the consent items are adopted. There is a confidential consent item, and that is the Melrose Business Park Phase 2 site plan application. Is there a motion for that? Councillor O'Meara. Thank you for your motion for the staff recommendation. Any objection? There being none, that's carried, Madam Clerk. We now come to our first public hearing item. This is the public meeting and recommendation report. And these are deferred items from OPA 34, the Northwest area and Palermo Village, OPA 37 and OPA 38. And we have a presentation from Kirk Bigger, the senior planner for policy planning and heritage. And if there's anyone watching the live stream of this meeting on oakville.ca and you wish to speak to this item, please call 905-815-6095 and we will connect you to the meeting. You'll be called upon to speak following registered delegations. And Council, we do not have any registered delegations. Mr. Bigger, you have the floor or the Zoom, whatever you want to call it.
Thank you, Mayor Burton, and good evening, members of Council. As mentioned, this is the first public hearing, public meeting and recommendation for two official plan amendments, 37 and 38, item 6.1 on the agenda. And we're really addressing some matters addressed from OPA 34, deferred items from OPA 34. So we'll get into how these puzzle pieces fit together and then a little bit the staff opinion and recommendation, and that should take care of this presentation. Next slide, please. As Mayor Burton mentioned, for those who wish to participate, there's a number there to call in on, 905-815-6095. I'm just trying to get my slides up here, pardon me. There we are. Great. Next slide, please. Just to situate ourselves within the town and the urban structure, which is essentially our long-term view about where and how to grow, how to protect the natural environment and the cultural heritage landscapes and cultural heritage resources around town, and then how to direct growth and how to maintain stability in our established areas. So the area that we're addressing tonight is the northwest of Oakville. And OPA 34 essentially was dealing with matters related to the area that's outlined in black on the slide here. OPA 34 had a few goals in mind when it was brought forward to council. It was to move the North Oakville West secondary plan lands out of the 1984 official plan and into the livable Oakville plan, which is a major step of the ongoing official plan review. Also to incorporate policies for the Northwest area into the livable Oakville plan as it related to employment matters and natural heritage system, and as well to establish modified policies for an expanded Palermo Village growth area. Next slide, please. So just a bit on timeline and how we came to this point this evening. OPA 34, as mentioned, has been to council in March 22nd of this year. That's where council and discussion, and in relation to some submissions, there were 4 matters deferred from OPA 34. There was no bylaw adopted that evening, although the council did adopt OPA 34. They didn't pass a bylaw. So staff brought forward a bylaw on April 12th, 2021, which essentially adopted OPA 34 as modified to exclude the matters deferred on the March meeting. So that brings us to tonight, where we're returning with OPAs 37 and 38 to address matters that were deferred from OPA 34. And just by way of summary and context for where we are with OPA 37 and 38, essentially the staff report is provided in great detail, additional information and context in support of the staff opinion, but we're returning this evening with the same opinion that we brought back with OPA 34. We haven't changed that opinion, we've just provided more information around that. Next slide, please. So the deferred matters, just quickly, they're the two main components of OPA 34, as mentioned, include Palermo Village, so growth area policies, and the Northwest area. So we deferred back in March the parking policies for the Palermo Village growth area, as well cultural heritage policies for the Palermo Village growth area. And for the Northwest area, based on submissions received, staff were requested to bring back additional information relating to extending the growth area boundary of Palermo Village north to the 407 corridor, as well shifting the proposed natural heritage system linkage north. And so this presentation, the staff report, addressed those matters in detail. Next slide, please. So here we just have a slide that will show the map essentially of how all these pieces fit together. So we'll just have one click, please. Excellent. So here we see the outline of the lands to be addressed through OPA 34. There are hospital district lands that are excluded, but essentially the light gray lands would be coming into livable Oakville as a new policy area, and an expanded Palermo Village North as well, adding to the land south of Dundas, which are the existing Palermo Village. So the policies will be modifying the existing and adding new for the extended to the north. One click, please. At that meeting where we deferred matters, we deferred essentially the star is dealing or identifying the cultural heritage policies and the parking policies that were deferred, and this whole, if you will, in the Northwest area to examine the extension of the growth area and the shifting of the linkage. So these are the areas that we will be addressing through new amendments this evening with new policies being proposed. One more click, please. So OPA 37, we've divided our four deferred matters into two official plan amendments. OPA 37 dealing with the Palermo Village policies, and then OPA 38 dealing with the Northwest area, north of the growth area. So one more click, please. So that's coming up there. So that's how we're breaking down our two amendments before you this evening. Next slide, please. Thank you. So just briefly, official plan amendment 37 is intended to establish area-specific parking and cultural heritage policies for the expanded Palermo Village growth area. The deferred policies are intended to be adopted this evening by council as an interim approach pending the refinements through results of the townwide parking strategy. That parking strategy, we have parking matters throughout town, so they'll be addressing those matters comprehensively, but it's not to be completed in the near term. And we expect that council will be receiving some outcomes later in the year. So staff tonight are recommending that the deferred parking policies be adopted, and these will provide an interim approach to parking designed for Palermo Village, which can be refined through the results of the parking strategy as applicable. Regarding cultural heritage, we've been studying cultural heritage in Palermo Village since at least 2003, and a detailed chronology of key events and results of those studies are presented in the report. We feel that this final set of policies being proposed this evening in OPA 37 is the final piece in the protection of cultural heritage and conservation of cultural heritage resources in Palermo Village, building on the policies existing in the Livable Oakville Plan, as well a number of site area-specific policies that link the cultural heritage conservation to urban design, views, streetscapes, parks, urban squares, and other programs initiatives that are contained within the Palermo Village growth area policies. So we feel that this is a complete and strong position for the conservation of cultural heritage resources in Palermo Village. And finally, the recommendation tonight from staff is to direct heritage planning staff to proactively examine listed heritage properties, and should a property in Palermo Village, and should a property meet the criteria for designation under the Ontario Heritage Act, recommend to council that notice be given to designate the property. So this is a great package for cultural heritage conservation. Next slide, please. Official Plan Amendment 38. Now I've reversed the topics here just to help a little bit how we deal with land use planning. First, again, back to our urban structure. We establish areas that won't change and that we intend to preserve for the long term. And you may recall conversations around, if you look back 100 years from now, what will the town look like? Things like the natural heritage system are such landscape features that we protect for the long term. So Official Plan Amendment 38 is dealing with this northwest area, which is identified on this schedule before you, and it really relates to the linkage preserve area and then the extension of employment lands north. The extension of the growth area north to the 407 and any results on employment lands that may come from that. So really this black circle here is identifying the linkage area that was the subject of the deferral and that we were bringing back for discussion this evening. So the North Oakville Natural Heritage System has been the subject of long-range, comprehensive, and interagency planning since 1999. The linkage has been identified as an important east-west connection and as part of a provincially significant wetland complex in the area. Most of the landscape here is dominated by north-south connections, and this linkage is a much valued east-west connection. And this is reflected in the town-wide approved urban structure and the North Oakville West secondary plan. Next slide, please. It's another view of the linkage, and to address the question of shifting it, this is a photo taken from June 1st, 2021, showing the natural heritage features in the area, the forest, and some wetland depressions and some wetland areas that exist there today that are identified as a linkage through all the work that's been undertaken for the last 20 years on this area. And I believe these points have really been spoken to. The final point to make on this slide is essentially that staff believe that the linkage preserve area just north of Palermo Village should remain in its current location and should not be shifted north. Next slide, please. Thank you. The other component of Official Plan Amendment 38 and the deferral was to explore the idea of extending the growth area boundary north to the 407 corridor, and this was based on some submissions that were received. And there's two main components to reviewing whether or not the shift was appropriate. The first was the existing Palermo Village, and the second was what would happen to the employment lands to the north. So the growth area of Palermo Village has been studied extensively and comprehensively over the long term. It's an identified growth area in the town's urban structure, and really in that location at Bronte Road and Dundas Street West represents excellent opportunities to create a transit-supportive, complete community within a mixed-use context, and accommodating some town facilities, commercial uses, a transit terminal, as well as some office and residential uses. For the reasons stated in the report, staff is of the opinion that the growth area boundary should not be extended north to the Highway 407 corridor, and essentially concentrating growth in that location at Bronte and Dundas is really our opportunity to focus on growing a node there and supporting transit, and to continue to improve the walkability and connectivity in the area, as well ensuring that much needed uses such as the library and community center, other amenities are provided in an accessible and appropriate location, including a transit terminal in the area of Palermo Village. And then the last point there really is to concentrate all these issues on major transit lines in order to provide some certainty and support for the planned and existing growth in the area. Next slide, please. So there's a long recommendation this evening dealing with these two separate official plan amendments. So I'll just go through them briefly. There's actually two slides dealing with them. So the first bullet is to receive the report, for council to receive the report. And second is to pass the bylaw to adopt official plan amendment 37. That's dealing with the Palermo Village policies for cultural heritage and parking. And then the third is to request that the region approve OPA 37 on its own, or to incorporate it into the already adopted official plan amendment 34. So there's some flexibility there about how the region may deal with the approval. And then that this is also the direction for staff to report back on any parking updates that may be appropriate upon completion of the parking strategy. Next slide, please. Thank you. So finally, the fifth through eighth bullets for the recommendation. Here we are in 5 to adopt OPA 38 and to repeal the official plan for the 1984 official plan. So that effectively brings the last piece of the Northwest puzzle inside the livable Oakville plan, which, as mentioned, is I guess a pretty favorable opportunity for those lands to be governed by the livable Oakville plan. Then we are requesting that the region approve OPA 38 on its own, or to incorporate into OPA 34, as mentioned with OPA 37. Then 7, to proactively examine listed heritage properties within Palermo Village and bring that back to council for decisions if appropriate. And then finally, our standard notice that council's decision reflects that council has fully considered all of the written and oral submissions relating to this matter, and that those comments have been appropriately addressed. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is the final slide. Thank you for your attention. If the official plan amendments are adopted this evening, then we'd be in a great position for the town of Oakville to provide some timely and critical information into the Halton Region's official plan review program, the regional official plan review. As well, we'd be submitting these packages to the region for approval. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if there were some questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Biggert. Let's see if you've generated any with your thorough summary of the extensive report. Let's see if you've generated Councillor Elgar.
Mayor Burton, I'd just like to thank staff for the more details they provided to help other councillors understand what staff have done back from 2000. So I commend them on the report. And if I realize now that's in Ward 7, so if a Ward 7 councillor wants to move it, I'd be pleased, or if they don't, I would. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for volunteering. Is there an interest in Ward 7 in moving this? Who wants the honor? Councillor Palmer, you get the honor. Council, is there any objection to the motion? Madam Clerk, seeing none, that's carried. Congratulations. Thank you, everybody. I now ask your attention for the item number 7.1, the discussion item. We need a motion that this item no longer be considered, given the application has been withdrawn by MHBC Planning on behalf of the owner, 2507 Dundas Storage GP Corporation, in a letter to the town dated June 29th. Can I have that motion? Councillor Palmer, thank you for that. Is there any objection? Madam Clerk, there is no objection, and that carries. We now
Recording in progress.
Oh, that's interesting. It's a surprise a minute with
Recording
Zoom.
stopped.
You know, we can't resume meeting in person soon enough for me. So let's hope step 3 allows it. Confidential discussion item 8.1, Ontario Land Tribunal Appeal, proposed OPA and zoning bylaw amendment for 358 Reynolds. You have a motion which I don't think you need to go into camera to ask, but you know, it is your privilege if any of you do want to. Otherwise, I'll look for a motion. Councillor Giddings.
Be happy to move them.
Thank you. Is there any objection? Madam Clerk, there being no objection, that is carried. That brings us to number 9, the Heritage Oakville Advisory Committee minutes. Ms. Van Sligtenhorst is available for questions only. There is a delegation available for questions, And there's correspondence that you've already seen from Denise Baker. Councillor Giddings, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If my council colleagues don't have any other questions, I'd be happy to pass approval of the minutes with one addition. In the correspondence you referred to from the proponent solicitor, there was a phrase on page 4. In addition, my client will continue to work with staff to satisfy the proposed conditions, or alternatively, I'd like to strike the or alternatively and include will accept an amendment to those conditions to ensure that a whitewashed tumbled brick finished with white mortar joints is used on the new additions on both sides of the property. So
Thank
that
you.
includes the one piece from Ms. Baker's letter.
It's understood. Thank you very much. Is there any objection to the motion? Madam Clerk, seeing none, that carries. Thank you, Councillor. It's now time to look for a motion to rise and report. Who wants to favor? Councillor Lischina, thank you for that. Is there an objection? I see none. That carries. And I rise and report that the Committee of the Whole has met and made recommendations on consent items 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, confidential consent item 5.1, public hearing items 6.1, discussion item 7.1, confidential discussion item 8.1, and advisory committee minutes item 9.1 as noted by the clerk. May I have a mover and seconder to adopt the report? Councillor Longo and Councillor Knoll, thank you very much. Any objection? There being none, the report is adopted. Is there any new business that anyone would like to bring before council? Very well. Would two of us like to move and second the consideration and reading of the bylaws? Councillor Robertson and Councillor Sandu, thank you. Any objection? There being no objection, the bylaws are confirmed. And that ends our meeting. It's been terrific working with you, and thank you very much. I'll see you tomorrow.